Welcome to the Hourly Podcast. In this episode, Chon Nguyen, CEO and founder at Newgentek and a partner at Proper House Group, discusses his journey from technology to the restaurant business. He started in the tech industry, providing IT services and consulting, before venturing into the restaurant space. Chon shares his experiences in managing technology infrastructure in restaurants and the challenges of standardization and supportability. He then emphasizes the importance of culture and people in the restaurant business, highlighting the need for collaboration and communication between the front of house and back of house staff. This conversation was truly insightful. Enjoy.
All right, guys. So today we have Chon Nguyen on the podcast. It's a partner at Proper House, CEO of Newgentek, and a bunch of other different SaaS and technology companies. I've had this one circled on my calendar for quite some time. You and I got to spend some time at the Prosper Forum. How are you, man? It's good to see you.
Doing good. Good to see you too, AJ. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So where are you calling in from again? I know you're in the Southeast somewhere.
Yeah, we're based in Tampa. Born and raised here all my life.
Yeah. And are all of your restaurants, I know that you have 8, right? Maybe 10. Are they located in Florida, all of them?
Yeah, they're pretty much all in the Tampa area. We have one in Lakeland that sort of sits in between Tampa and Orlando. It's in a food hall there, but they're all within 45 minutes of the Tampa area.
Very cool. And yeah, I have been excited to talk because you're like the perfect blend of things that I'm passionate about. You're in tech, you have SaaS business, which is software as a service, and you also own a bunch of restaurants, right? So like you and I are passionate about a lot of the same things, trying to look and solve a lot of the same or similar problems. Let's talk, like, where did you start? Was it tech first and then restaurants, or you were owner of a restaurant and you saw that you needed some tech support?
It was technology first. I was just growing up. I was just super into technology. I had aging myself, but we had a BBS, which was a bulletin board system, kind of before the internet. I was messing around with those in elementary school. I got my Microsoft certification in high school when I was 16, my MCSE, and then just started to kind of do some consulting with some people my dad knew and set up their networks and systems. I kind of started a computer repair IT business before MSP, managed services providers, was a thing, and just sort of grew into it. I didn't go to college, and just sort of found a niche in solving people's problems with technology, and grew it from there. And so I had a business that was doing that with a partner. I sold that. I started Newgentek in 2017. We started doing some restaurant IT support, which kind of led me into the restaurant business in my first business. And so for multi-unit restaurants, we were doing like all of their new restaurant opening support. We were pulling their cable, installing the network, setting up their phone system, setting up their ISPs. We work with a lot of brands that we were doing that for all of their new restaurant openings. So we had teams all across the country that were supporting their new restaurant openings. I was in the kitchen one day and saw that they had this recipe binder that held all the recipes, and just started going back and forth with one of the chefs, and he said it would be cool if we could digitize this, because when I go to make a change in the recipe, I don't know if it's up to date in all the restaurants in the system, and I'll do a visit and find out that, they've been using the wrong recipe for 6 months. And so built out a really simple content management system, and gave it to him, and just sort of started iterating on that, and built Fusion Prep. It's over 10 years old now. We're in about 3,000 restaurants, grows every year. There's some great, mostly, middle market size customers. We're not really in the enterprise space, but it's a tool that's used every single day. We're printing I think 8,000 labels a day last time I checked, food safety labeling. So we're used every day in the unit. So it's really cool to kind of travel around other markets and see it out there. And then there's a small restaurant here in Tampa that I was a customer of, and I work with chains all the time. And this was like a 30-seat restaurant in Seminole Heights, which is kind of like the the Brooklyn to Manhattan of Tampa, and so it's just kind of a up and coming area. They had a small restaurant. I liked what they were doing. I ate there all the time, and told them that if they ever expanded, I would love to be a part of it. So did the second one with them, and then the original investors wanted out of the first one. I took them out, and then we've been together ever since. Rooster and the Till is the flagship restaurant. We do a tasting menu and have a Michelin Bib Gourmand, but that just celebrated 10 years in December, and yeah, we have 7 others, and then we have two that are opening in a couple months in Trinity, which is a suburb of Tampa.
Nice. So you're busy. You're busy with a lot of different things
a lot
going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a lot of interests, like you said. So it's the intersection of technology and hospitality.
Yeah. So what were some things like when you first got into the restaurant business that surprised you? Like, I'm assuming it wasn't as easy as you thought, right? What are some of those initial things that you're like the welcome to varsity moments where you're like, oh no, what did I just do?
It's having a managed IT business, and we weren't vertical, like we didn't focus on any specific businesses. So I got I was able to kind of always have a front row seat, pretty detailed on, managing their IT infrastructure at different businesses. I think, restaurants are just a unique, you'd think no one is a special snowflake, but restaurants are very unique businesses, especially when you go down market into, to smaller ones. I think when you work with a lot of larger chains, they have a lot of the systems figured out and are built to scale, but it's really, it's a art and science at the same time. You're putting on a show every single night, and every single time you go into service, and but you have to have your fundamentals right, and so it takes a lot of discipline and management. So I would say it's just the margins are typically low, but I think when you do it right, it works, and we or try to be really smart about real estate, but it's a tough business to run. It would be my short answer.
And is there any particular story that you'd be willing to share of like something maybe exciting or fun or a little crazy that happened that really puts you in the place of, wow, I'm in the restaurant business now, right? Like this is different. Does anything like immediately come to mind over your first, let's say, year or so of your first restaurant?
I think what's special about it is that you are able to celebrate a lot of events with people. In special moments and like that, if you read Unreasonable Hospitality or Setting the Table or anything by the the greats, it's it unlike sort of any other business, you get the chance to make an impact on people, and we've had people come in and celebrate their get married and or get engaged and celebrate anniversaries and birthdays, and people that have come into the restaurant as couples for years, and then they'll lose someone will unfortunately pass away. It's just like it's an intimate business that you get, and it's a gift to be able to participate in some of those moments. And so that's been really, really great for me, is to kind of have that. It's more of an emotional business, I guess.
Yeah. No, I get it. Right. Just coming from the technology side, is that something that's really romantic, right? And I think about like some of my best memories are associated with certain restaurants, right? Like first date with my wife, like the first time I got to like escape the baby with my with my oldest for like an ice cream trip, right? And you associate like the smells and the experience with like life's greatest challenges and life's greatest moments. So no, I totally get it, and I think you put it really, really well. But like when I think about that, I mean, just from the problems that I'm solving and what we talk a lot on the hourly podcast and in the book is around the people associated with those experiences, right? Because to your point, when people come in, they want to really have a good time, right? And they expect, and depending on the restaurant, a different level of service. And then you get into culture and performance and like all these different things. So like when you first joined the restaurant business, how are you thinking about people, right? Because I'm assuming that, and maybe this you could clear this up for us, but what I would assume is that you were hiring people at your tech company that were making more that talk to customers less. When now it's like you're paying people far less and they're experiencing your customers far more. Like, was that a shift as well? Like, what are some of your early learnings there?
Yeah, I take a lot of disciplines across the businesses, hospitality into the technology we try to introduce, and then of course systems and systems thinking and design in the restaurant side. The people side of it, it's culture, to your point, is really important, and making sure that you give people, finding people that care about taking care of other people and making that a priority, and making sure that we're continuously communicating that. I think we do find that it is a shift in mentality when we take people from even other restaurant companies, that we try to give people the flexibility to make people's night and surprise and delight. And a lot of the things that we talk about and continue to talk about are sort of foreign to them. And so it's getting them in that mentality and making sure they're not afraid to take risks. Or if they may have come from an environment where if you comp somebody's dessert, they're going to get questioned about it and ask why that happens. Whereas here, for us, if we're able to make someone's night, we really try to celebrate that and bring it to the front. And so it's not we're not perfect at it by any means, but we work at it every day to try to make sure that our people feel empowered to deliver a great experience. We talk about it as being a differentiator, and what can we deliver to our guests that they're not going to get if they go and dine somewhere down the street, and try to continue to challenge them to think like that.
Yeah, and tactically, how do you do that, right? Because there's this, and I'm sure that you face this. There's this temptation when building process to standardize, especially as you get bigger
Yeah.
and you scale. So it's like what I hear you saying is like you're kind of standardizing towards providing flexibility, which is somewhat paradoxical, but and I'm sure can be pretty challenging. How do you tackle that there?
We try to talk about it in as much as we can. So at any opportunity we have to continue to recast what our visions and vision and priorities are, we try to celebrate the wins. And so when we are able to identify people that exhibit those behaviors, making sure that we communicate that across the organization and company. We have different service models too. So we have some full service restaurants. We have a cocktail bar and lounge. We have some QSRs, and so I think you have customers across the different service models as well, and
Yeah.
that presents challenges. You obviously have less opportunities to interact with the guests during quick service, but we try to be broad about sharing. The times where we go above and beyond. If we get a positive review, we try to circulate that across the organization as well and celebrate that. Full service, we have pre-meal, before every service. And so you get that opportunity to get the team together, but not everybody works every day. And so it's a challenge, but we try to be thoughtful and about making sure that we continue to, always be talking about it.
Yeah,
It's important to us.
Double tap on pre-meal for me. So like this is an emerging trend that I'm seeing outside of fine dining, right? So traditionally, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's traditional within fine dining, Michelin S-star restaurants that everybody comes together and has a meal before you actually give service, right? And I don't want to butcher this, so I'll hand it over to you. But I'm actually finding as we deal with more and more restaurants, people doing that even in quick service restaurant, where before you come in, and the restaurant will offer a meal to you before your shift starts. And talk to us a little bit about like the benefits of doing that tactically, how you do it. And if I completely botched the explanation of it, please correct me.
Yeah, we have what we call family meal, which we'll do on the weekends, which is what you said. So like we'll come together and share a meal. Pre-meal is more in the tech world of like a stand-up. So like it's sort of that half an hour before service, and we're talking about reviewing service from the day before, what opportunities we have for improvement. It's more of a tactical service delivery. What any new menu items, we'll taste the menu items, we'll taste wine, talk about it. We'll let people give some like take the floor and share a guest experience or something that they would like to talk about. And so that's more of like a stand up, in the tech world. Family meal is more like social, like so somebody in the kitchen will plan the meal, they'll execute it, and then it'll share a meal, and typically that'll happen like on Saturdays. But
yeah, because when I think
together.
about like the principles and like the nuts and bolts of it, like so little of that is actually about like the actual meal. Like yes, it is to like come together and nourish the people, but I find that it's rare within restaurants for people to come within your workforce to come together and like actually spend time, right? And so much of the culture of the organization is built on shift. And on shift in a restaurant, as you know, is like not a like pleasant experience all the time, right? Like I feel like when the bear came out, you're really starting to see like what happens behind some doors, and those are a little extreme at times, right? But like even within drive-through windows, like a shift for somebody could really mean and look like you're talking to somebody on the phone, you're doing the Coke, and you're putting the fries in. It's not like you're having conversations with your team members. So like these meals together are, I think a lot of times, like the only time that you really get to come together, talk, learn about one another, and build relationships, which is just, I think, so absent, especially in quick service restaurant. But also like as you move further up, it's like the more it's needed, right? And so, what I'm curious about is as you're thinking about scaling and doing more QSR or more, even fine dining, what are some other things that you are thinking about in terms of like building your culture, scaling kind of that family feel, maybe even beyond the dinners?
We try to get our leadership together once a quarter to do a breakfast, again, just to collaborate and share ideas. But you talked about when the doors open, especially in full service, it really is siloed. The front and back of house is siloed, right? Like the servers interact with typically the expo position, right? They're coming to run the food, whether the servers or food runners are running it. But the front and back of the house really don't get a chance to kind of collaborate and sit down and talk to each other when like they really depend on each other and work closely together to provide a great experience. And so you're right, family meal does break that down. And so I think there's still a lot of opportunities to think through that and figure out ways to improve that communication and camaraderie and so again, we're not perfect at it, but there's certainly an opportunity there. But our management staff, we do try to get together and share ideas, and we have we use Slack as our communication platform, and so that's all open, and so people from other concepts can see kind of the conversation that's happening there, and we encourage collaboration. And but some of those, we talked about the difference between technology and the restaurant business. It's really cool to see the difference between them and figure out ways to bring that together, because I think that like the idea of a restaurant company collaborating on Slack 5 years ago, 8 years ago or something, probably never, the idea of transparency like that and probably never would have been a thing. And so it's cool to see that kind of evolve. So
what's your general viewpoint? Whenever we have a larger operator on here, we talk a lot about deploying technology in the restaurants. And I think the restaurant business is very hard on themselves, but curious to hear your thoughts that they're so laggard, right? So like they know that there's technology out there that can help, but slow to adopt, difficult to implement. And, what's interesting, whenever I talk to a restaurant owner, I'm talking about from the SaaS provider's perspective versus the company that's going to adopt it. And that the SaaS provider perspective is, it's a very hard market to sell into because it's highly fragmented. It's a lot of SMBs, mom and pop shops that don't have a huge technology stack. And I think, just speaking really bluntly, like, technology companies don't really work together very well. Like, integrations in this space don't always go smoothly. And, SMB customers, don't always pay on time. SMB customers don't always, like the long-term contracts. And SMB customers, like, for better or for worse, maybe it's better because they hold customers or SaaS companies like really accountable for their services, but they churn a lot, right? So I think the temptation when you have high growth, high venture dollar, high technology platforms, they want to work with the enterprise. They want to work with the Microsofts, the Metas, the Datadogs, that, like, if they sign a contract, they're going to pay that day. They're going to stay for 3 years. And so net retention, when I go to raise my next round of financing, it's 150% net retention, great customer set, all of this. When compared to a lot of SaaS companies that service the restaurant space, it's like death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's like you get 1,000 customers quickly, but it's 80% retention, 20% in and out. So you have to grow really high just to cover the churn. And that's not just a business problem. It's this company went out of business, this person shared or sold the restaurant, or this person has a new head of this part of their business that no longer supports it. It seems like you've been part of the introduction of technology since the very beginning. And, like, to your point, like, I'm not going to age you, but you did say, like, hey, like, a lot of the things when you were in high school is the first time these restaurants had technology inside of restaurants. So, like, what's some of your thoughts around, like, the adoption of technology in restaurants? Is it getting easier? Is it getting harder? Like, what are some characteristics? I mean, just give us a quick overview on that.
Man, there's a lot in there for me. Like, so, like, the infrastructure business that we have, we work with a lot of multi-unit operators. I think, I'd say within the last couple years, companies are just now starting to, understand the value of standardization and supportability at the unit level, right? I mean, so for the longest time, you would see a company try to roll out something like handhelds, or even in BYOD right now, where people, where you're depending on the user to order from their own device, right? It's just the infrastructure as a whole. So, you would walk into, like, as an example, we would do a site survey for like a 10-unit chain. Nothing was standardized across it. The cabling was a rat's nest. Like, if anything went wrong, the supportability in it was, nothing was labeled. And so it was so difficult for them to no access points in the kitchen, like spotty Wi-Fi in the dining room. And so I think, operators have really been focused on, improving that so that they have a stable platform. So when they look to roll out, some of these things, that they're in a much better shape at the unit level, redundant internet, right? Those sort of things. So that was sort of like one piece on the maturity cycle. I think, rolling out technology at the unit level, that's like, fairly nuanced for me. Like, I think some operators do it well. I think it depends on the service style. But, like, we have a Bar Taco in my neighborhood here in Tampa. I think, they are by far one of they have really done well with it. I think, they use one dine at the table wisely, seat management. And so you're kind of seeing some of them being able to tie that stuff together, but it's taken them time and it's evolved. But to me, that's like an example of a great experience. I think their service model supports it as well. If you look at our full service restaurant, like, we don't even have point of sale. Like, our point of sale terminals are below the bar. We have nothing in the dining room. Like, for us, it is very much about the experience there. And so we try to keep technology in the background. And
which is so ironic.
There's
right?
all sorts
it's so ironic. Because I think about, like, I have this vision of you as a teenager being like the young computer guy that these restaurants called because we need somebody who understands this kind of stuff, right? And you go from,
Yep.
I'm sure, being on your soapbox, being like, we got to add this, we got to add this, we got to add this, to now that you have a restaurant, you're like, no, minimalistic. Like, well, this needs to be about people. Like, where did that?
Yeah.
And I don't want to put, if that's not the case, like, I don't want to assume, but like, that's my vision right now. Like, where do you feel like the tides turned, or is it just because it's that type of restaurant that requires a little bit different?
Well, I think it goes back to your point too about selling into these businesses. Like I think a lot of times, I sell into the businesses too with my SaaS company and the technology business. And I think like, they are so, there are so many nuances into running the business. And I think like, if you were to look at it just like from a pure technology play, like even adoption, right? Like, so if you look at the tools that people introduce to their technology stack, there are, I could show you a lot of our customers that, will roll out these tools and they may be using, 10% of them from an adoption perspective, right? So if you did like a customer scorecard, they would be ripe for churn, right? Because, they're likely not getting the value out of the tool, and you can extrapolate that across their entire technology stack. And that just comes from like, I think not having the resources to be able to support these products, right? And so as an operator, and I would encourage fellow operators to just be really thoughtful, when you're evaluating tools. Like if you are 5 units and looking to put in a, like a Restaurant 365 or a Margins Edge or something that like is going to take a significant amount of lift to introduce into the system and then support, right? Do you have the resources to do that? Like, I think a lot of people go in with strong intentions they want to revolutionize their restaurant, when likely there's something they could do that would yield them an 80% lift for 10%, right? Like instead they try to swing for the fences, and that's no different from any other business too, right? I mean, you see that with ERPs
Everything.
across other
Well, I think I think like a lot of it, and like just being part of a lot of these buying decisions, and my day job at Sprockets is, it's like when somebody signs up, like I think it's great to have the courage and conviction to try something new, and that's fantastic. But if it's not part of your go forward motion and movement and DNA, it's really hard to gain widespread adoption across your restaurant base. So like, one of the hard things that, you and I are intimate with is like the turnover of even like general managers inside of the restaurants, right? And you're probably like far less than, let's just say, like a group of Bojangles or a group of Jack in the Box or something like that. But if you think about, like, to your point around usage of the technology and like the churn scorecards, is over the course of an annual subscription, you might have 4 or 5 different GMs, right? And that's like not crazy in the space. So if you corporate, the home body organization that purchases the software, aren't investing regularly into the adoption of the tech, not just buying it the first time, then by the time the 5th person comes around, they're not going to even know what it is. They're not going to understand the importance of it, not going to know why you bought it, and they're not going to be encouraged to like go out and use it at scale. But no, definitely get it. And there's so much there that we can talk about. I know we're coming up on time. I have one final question for you, and maybe we'll do a part 2. I think it'd be interesting just given today's conversation, but yours will be interesting. It's, what is your first hourly job? And did you get fired or did you leave that job? And it can't be like a computer whiz kid thing. Like, I don't know if you ever like lifeguarded or you did dishwashers for a summer or you sold newspapers, but like, what was that first job for you?
My first paid job was at the YMCA. I was a camper there, and then I volunteered, and then it was my first job as well. So I did a lot of jobs at the YMCA. I volunteered there all through high school, and now I'm on the board of the YMCA awesome. Here in Tampa. So kind of full circle. But yeah, it's a really important organization to me. It did a lot for me growing up.
So you didn't get fired, I'm assuming, and you never,
Not
according to
fired.
that,
No,
you,
no, no.
you never really left. You just kind of stuck around like throughout, or you took a hiatus. How did that work?
I took a hiatus, yeah, and then sort of circled back as I like when the businesses got a little more mature and started focusing on doing some board work and stuff here in the community. That was just it was one that I knew that I wanted to get back involved with.
Love it, love it. Well, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how should they do that? And what do you love connecting with people over?
Entrepreneurship. I mean, I really like the build process. So, for me, like when we launch a new restaurant or, do concept development and, ideate on that. And we have, creative team and interior design team. And, like we've done this with as a group for a couple of these here now. And so, that's really fun to me. But entrepreneurship and the build process and seeing people solving problems and go to market, and that's really exciting to me. I love spending time talking to people about that.
Cool. And LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach you.
Yeah, on LinkedIn, SeanNguyen.com, ChonNguyen.com has all my social and email contacts too. So,
well, cool, man. Thanks for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, AJ. Good chatting with you.